Yo, what up, y'all?
Sup?
It's almost December and Santa Claus is looking for a list.
Hey, you been naughty or nice?
So we gonna give it to you. Here we go. We got 10 for 10, that's comic books, graphic novels, that's Richie ends, and we Marvel DC, we know what it is, and we got Image and all of the independents. Onrie and Kevin, we spitting this flow, why? So we can give you deals and we can let you know why. Because you about to spend all that money, we getting ready, go on lockdown, and it's honey right now. We got Christmas right around the corner. We got Hanukkah, Harry, looking for more, and we got doing and everything in the holidays. Happy Hanukkah, happy Christmas, happy Chronic Days.
We crazy!
Crazy. Yo.
Victory Seekers, welcome back to Live with Onrie. We got a great show for you guys this afternoon. We are coming back with a boom! And we got ROSS RITCHIE in the house. Ross, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on here today.
Thanks for having me.
My man. Awesome. Well, Ross, sorry. We met back in 2014 at Comics Pro. And back then I was I was trying to push my self-published comic. And I remember being there. So this is my first experience of meeting you. And I wanted to learn about the business. I wanted to learn how publishers and dealers interacted with each other. And so I walked up to you and I asked you, Ross, I'm not a dealer. I'm just trying to learn as a self-publisher. Is it okay if I can sit in on your round table? And you said yes. I got to sit down and I got to learn and I got to see how you and your team work together. And since then, I've just seen you take your company and go to the top with everything you're doing, which is just absolutely amazing. It is such an honor to have you here. And I want to give you the kind of treatment that I feel you deserve when it comes to interviews, because you've given us such great interviews with creators that are putting out some of the best independent comics that we're seeing right now. And
thank you.
I wanted you to tell us a little bit about how things have been for you since this shutdown, like how after the shutdown you guys have just managed to build everything up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And you mentioned that I do these interviews on YouTube. And what you're talking about is that I launched a YouTube channel, and the concept was to do long form interviews with comic book creators. And I had a couple months back decided to get more engaged on Instagram. And one of the things that started to happen as I started to post more frequently on Instagram was that I got a lot of comments from people that didn't know how to break into comics. And they didn't know a lot of real fundamental information about submissions processes and different ways to get their work seen. And so one of the things that I decided with these interviews that I was going to do with creators was to talk to these creators about how they broke in. And so the first episode that I uploaded was a 2-hour, 20-minute conversation with James Tynion IV, that you'd know as the writer of Batman. He's the writer of Department of Truth for Image, and he does Something is Killing the Children for Boom. And during the conversation, which is very detailed and very specific, I asked him about his influences, how he first started to read comics, how he broke in, every single little detail along the way. And the idea would be to have a roadmap for somebody that would be looking to break in. And so James has a very specific story about how he broke into comics. And it's Mark Waid said that every time somebody breaks into comics goes over and patches the hole in the wall so that nobody can break into comics the same way. But every little piece of information helps. And so when I did my second interview, which was with Kieran Gillen, Kieran and I talked for 3 hours. And Kieran has a really specific story about how he broke in. And your audience would know Kieran from huge Image series, Wicked and the Divine, which smash hit, Die, which was a huge hit for Image as well. He does Once and Future, which is a huge hit for us at Boom.
We've sold it on our show, Once and Future.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And so the notion is with Kieran that he broke in as a video games journalist as well as a music journalist, and then transitioned over into writing comics. And he really didn't discover comics until he was well into his adulthood. And so he has a completely different story than James, who knew what he was doing early on, wanted to do that, targeted it, basically changed his whole life and his whole strategy to break into comics as soon as he could. And so everybody has a different story. And so hopefully if your audience is interested in any of those authors, because I know that comic book fans love to know about process, even if they don't want to write or don't want to draw. If you're an artist, it would be interesting to learn how writers think and how they create. And certainly both of them talk about their artistic collaborators and sort of point out certain specifications and the ways that they work. And if you're aspiring to be a writer, if you're a retailer and you want to know more about the product that you're selling, they're great tools. That's what I'm hoping to do. And of course, I'm interested in everybody's reaction to it. So if you don't like it, I'm just as interested in as if you like it. So, you know, I'm a publisher, so I'm used to people not buying things as much as them buying things. And they're both instructive processes. So, you know, again, if you don't like it, you know, I already had a guy go on the YouTube channel and basically say, you interrupt your guests too much. So, you know, and which is true. The flip side is, you know, sorry, you know, bad news, it's my show. So I'm going to do what I want, you know. So,
that's exactly what I was thinking, Ross.
You know what? I mean, it's a legit criticism.
Exactly. Well, I think you and I have a lot in common because we both sport the same hairdo. So I think that means that we're in sync with each other.
Yes. The Professor X haircut. Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I actually want to ask you a question building off of what you just told me. Because I think what you're doing is you're giving back. You're giving back by giving us a chance to really talk with these guys and without limitation. Because Live with Onrie is a 1 hour show, right? And if you and I go on a little bit longer today, I'm totally fine with that too. But you're a busy man. You got places to be. You got things to do. But when you're sitting with these creators, not only are you getting in depth with guys who are at the very, very top level, but you're giving them in-depth interviews, and you also have the experience of working with them. So I want to dive back. I want to get to know Ross Ritchie. I want everybody to know Ross Ritchie by the time they're done with this show because you're the focal point. I want to know about your origin into comics. How did you decide one day that you didn't want to write, you didn't want to draw, you wanted to publish these things, and you loved the business side of it? How did this all occur? I'm fascinated to know.
Well, it's a crazy story that doesn't make any sense. So I'll try to go through it in such a way that gives it some sense of coherence, but I don't promise any coherence. I discovered comics. My mom gave me an Easter basket with a Fantastic Four and Captain America comic in it when I was 6. And I was completely seized with it, the imagination. And this is a time period when there was not a lot of science fiction, fantasy movies, action movies even. And I knew every month that I could get, or TV shows, and I knew every month that I could get exciting tales of adventure. And I really fell in love with science fiction. And I got into superheroes mostly through science fiction and the Fantastic Four, and then slowly got interested in superheroes from there. And then when I was 12, I discovered the independents, and I got really excited about the idea that you could tell stories that were not bound by superhero continuity or limited by that is maybe the way that I would put it. I love superheroes. I have a garage full of them, so this is in no way to throw any shade on superheroes. I'm, you know, fanboy number one. I was personal friends with Stan Lee, so you know you can't find a bigger fan of superhero comics, Marvel and DC. But I love the independents, and that was companies like Eclipse and First and Kamiko were like a huge influence on me. And I think what I'm doing today is some version of that. So when I turned 16, I needed to keep my comic book money for gas money, and it turned into date money. And I got out of comics. I got back in when I was in college. And I was always interested in all aspects of comics. What's that?
I didn't mean to cut you off. What was that gap? So you got out of comics. You mean you just lost them as they just weren't something you were buying anymore, or something you were following?
I didn't have the money. I couldn't have a girlfriend and comics at the same time. So it was, real simple practical consideration. Then when I got into college, I had a roommate that heard me talking about comics, and he bought one for me on a lark as just kind of a nice little present. And it was a Jim Lee X-Men comic, and that got me back in. And from there, when I moved out to Los Angeles, I had a film degree, and I was interested in working in the movie business, but it was a freelance business. And so I was working as a production assistant trying to break in, and the money was very inconsistent, and I didn't like the inconsistency. So it was clear to me that I needed a staff job. And I went to a comic book convention. I got into a conversation at the Malibu Comics booth, and they offered me a job. Craziest thing. So, just like in the way at Comics Pro that you struck up a conversation with me and it got you an opportunity to sit down at a retailer roundtable and an opportunity to learn. You never know, I certainly didn't understand when I was just talking to a publisher that they were going to offer me a job. I wasn't looking for one. It turned out I needed it. But, always be cognizant and aware of who you're talking to, because you don't know what opportunities might appear before you. So then I went to work at Malibu, and for people who don't know, Malibu published a line of books called the Ultraverse, and there were creators that were working for them that are real Hall of Famers. So it was Steve Englehart and Steve Gerber, Barry Windsor Smith, who's really famous for doing the Weapon X stuff with Wolverine, was working for the company. It was a murderer's row of real talent.
Can I give a shout out to one of my personal mentors, Len
Sure.
Straczynski?
I love Len. Len is a terrific. Please give him all my love.
Will do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love Len.
Please continue.
Yeah. And then they were doing Bravura, and Bravura had Walter Simonson and Howard Chaykin and Gil Kane and Norm Brayfogle. Well, Norm was working for Ultraverse and Bravura. There was just a tremendous number of writers and artists that were doing incredible work. Stephen Grant, that's how I met Stephen Grant. Later on, I went and I published Two Guns, and we turned it into a movie starring Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg. So that's how I got that relationship, was with Stephen Grant. So I worked there. Marvel bought the company, and it was clear to me that it was not a good match. And so I used that as an opportunity to transition out. And I decided to go back to Hollywood, and I got a job as a script reader, which is production companies and agencies get more scripts than they can possibly read. And so they bring in freelancers whose the idea is that you're good analytically with story. And so I eventually became Arnold Schwarzenegger's reader. And so I read a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger scripts. So just for fun, there was a movie that Arnold was doing called The End of Days.
Yes, I remember this. It's one of my favorites. I love
All
it.
right. Well, how the end of days happened was that every studio, this is a time period when studios were figuring out that they needed an event movie in the middle of the summer, because previous to this, it wasn't necessarily clear. They didn't sculpt their schedules like that. This was 25 years ago. So Warner Brothers realized they needed an event movie for their summer, and they didn't have one. And so I've forgotten the name of the screenwriter who came in. He pitched them. He basically said, I don't have the story right now, but the movie poster is Arnold versus the Devil, and we're going to call it The End of Days. Okay. And Warner's was like, great, I'll buy Arnold versus the Devil. And then they basically, seeing how they didn't really have a story nailed down, they were going into production and they didn't really have a script. And so one of my jobs was, as new drafts came in and they were sort of trying to write the movie as they were on their way to make the movie, it was my job to track the differences and explain to the agents whether we felt that the project got more commercial or less commercial, or more coherent or less coherent. So that's just that fun little sidebar. So during this time period, one of the things I'm doing is I'm keeping in contact with comic book creators and going to conventions and seeing my buddies, Howard Chaykin, Walter Simonson, all these guys, and saying hi. And I develop a relationship with Keith Giffen. And Keith and I just become friends. Keith calls me up because his comic book Trencher was going to get optioned by Mel Gibson. And Keith wanted to understand if he had a good deal or a bad deal. And I sort of said, look, you know, you don't have the best deal, but you don't have the worst deal. You're in the middle. And if I was you, I would take it because it's an opportunity, and Mel Gibson was a big deal back then. And who knows if he makes your movie. If he does, then you're in great shape. So that's how Keith and I got to know each other, and we just became friends, and we call and talk back and forth. And then Keith called me up and said, so this is the worst breaking in story to comics ever. So your audience will be super perturbed and confused by this. But Keith calls me up and he says, I'm doing a series at Image. I'm going to draw it, and you're going to write it. Now, the catch with this is I'm not a writer. So I say to Keith, you know, the problem with your flawless plan is I'm not a writer. And Keith said, look, I'm going to do this series at Image. I'm going to draw it, and you're going to write it. And I said, Keith, you know, it seems like you're not listening to me, and I'm trying to use really plain English. I can't write. Now, what Keith knows is my wife is a writer. She was my girlfriend back then. And so I say to Keith, you know, I'm not a writer. But, you know, you say to me again that you're going to do this. And what I'm going to tell you is I've been reading your comics since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. You're one of my favorite creators. You have one of the best careers in the business, great longevity, and it would be a thrill to work with you professionally. But I'm just telling you that if I take this gig, I know I'm not a writer, and I turn the script in and it sucks. You're going to have to rewrite me, and I won't be mad. And I won't feel like my toes are being stepped on. And, you know, you save the project and make us both look like geniuses. And I'll tell everybody from here on out that you actually rewrote me and made the damn thing legible. And sure enough, that's basically what happened. From that, Keith came to town here in LA, and we were drinking beer. And Keith said, you know, I really think you should publish. So there's another sort of like crazy once in a lifetime, you know, odds probably like 10 million to 1 that one of your favorite comic book creators tells you, you know, what you should really be doing is publishing comics. And that really hit a chord for me. And I said to Keith, you know, look, if I undertake this opportunity, nobody knows who Boom is, but people know who Keith Giffen is. So if you really think this is something I should do, you have to put your money where your mouth is. And the first slate of books that I'm going to publish, you're going to need to come up with them. Keith's very prolific. He comes up with a million ideas. And so basically, I'm going to greenlight the first 6 months worth of stuff, and everyone's going to think Boom Studios is half owned by Keith Giffen, because all I'm going to be doing is publishing Keith Giffen comics. And so Keith was true to his word and helped me get on my feet and launch the company. And that was 2005, and the rest is history. So
there are so many thoughts that were going through my mind. Telling me everything, because I actually had the pleasure of having dinner with Keith last year.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's a really Planet Comic-Con in what is it, Kansas City.
Okay, cool, great. Now hang on. So it was Keith, and who else?
Jim Starlin and Shannon Tucker. So Shannon Tucker is she's a friend of mine, and she's picked up Beast and Chin before, and we just got to becoming friends. So she called me up at the show one day, and she's like, hey, do you want to have dinner with Jim Starlin and Keith Giffen? Yeah, why not? So I was like, you know, it was cool to hang out with him. And it was through them that I met Afua Richardson. So, and she's a very good friend of mine. But speaking of Keith Giffen, he is a close collaborator, or once was a close collaborator of my mentor and my co-writer on Yusuf, David Anthony Kraft. And
great. So, I've never met David, but you know, I think he had, you know, we should do all this stuff off camera, because I think he's a buddy of Brian Stelfreeze, who I adore. Yes.
Yeah. So you know, Dak is he has taught me everything I know about comics and publishing. And here's the thing I've learned about it is, at first I thought I would never want to get into publishing. That's just and I'm building up to the question I'm asking you. I'm just telling you that this is how I see publishing. It's this dauntless, unforgiving job where you never get credit for anything you do. It's always the creators that get the credit. Every smart decision, they get the credit for. Every bad decision, you get the credit for. It's that one thing you mess up. And it's that one, everybody hates you because you're the guy who's calling the shots. You're the one rejecting everybody. You're the one who has to tell people that they still need to go and polish up what they're doing and everything. And I don't want that. I didn't want that job for a long time. And then I kind of naturally fell into it in my own way. But it's interesting, and I feel the same way about comic book dealing as well. So you, as a publisher, you're dealing with this on such a higher level than I could ever possibly imagine, because you're pulling in so much raw talent, people that you've had years of experience working with, years of experience like reading their work and essentially editing it and designing it. And you've developed this really incredible intuition of what works and what doesn't. And it shows through your comics, because if you didn't know what you were doing, we wouldn't be seeing some of the wonderful stuff that Boom is putting out today. One series that I'm really loving right now, Ross, is Origins. I just picked up the first issue, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Guys, it'll be for sale tomorrow. I got one copy of it. You better call it as you see it when you come on the show tomorrow. I'll be on CBSN. We'll talk more about that later. But going back to Origins and just your sense of, being able to, the real talent from what I see coming from you, what all your experiences culminated to is you being able to read something or see something and know how to make it work. And you had creators like Keith Giffen tell you that this is the path that you should do. So when was that moment that you were like, boom, it exists now, literally and figuratively?
Well, I think that I had the luck of, when I worked at Malibu, I was in the marketing department, and I saw the inner workings of a comic book company that was functioning at a very high level, and high enough that Marvel would buy them. And we had the reunion, the 20th reunion of the Malibu Comics staff, closed door affair. It was just the staff getting together. And the editor-in-chief said to me, and now I worked in the marketing department, so I didn't work for the editor-in-chief, but Chris Ullum, who's the editor-in-chief, he said to me, hey, Ross, I always liked Sam better than I liked you. And knowing Chris, who is a very funny guy, I said, why do you say that, Chris? And he said, well, I would tell Sam what to do and he'd go do it, but I'd tell you what to do and you'd want to know why. And I think that was 100% accurate, because what I was always interested in was, why do you market first issues and you don't market as hard second issues?
I also wonder that. Why is that?
Well, here's your answer, is it does not matter how hard you work on selling second issues. The same number of people are going to buy second issues. And you can try to convince people to stick around, but it doesn't matter. Basically, you cannot affect the sales attrition curve. The place that you can affect the sales attrition curve is on the first issue. And and Onrie, when you know this intuitively, okay, is like, can you sell a ticket to somebody and say, I want you to come in after the first 30 minutes of the movie? No. And if you say, hey, I'll tell you what, instead of it $15 to watch this movie, it'll be $1, but you come in 30 minutes after the setup, and nobody will take you up on that. So why put the energy into issue 2? You need to put the energy into issue 1, and that's the gate where everybody starts, right? And so at the end of the day, I just learned all of those publishing tricks. But the thing that I didn't realize, which is, I should warn your audience that you shouldn't be listening to me because I was too stupid to understand this, was my dad owned his own business. My mom owned her own business. So I was the product of two entrepreneurs, and my grandfather owned his own business. And so I was a third generation entrepreneur. So there's no question that it's in my blood. And that's just, I have the kind of mind where when I was in a large scale operation, I just relentlessly asked questions to the point of annoying the upper leadership about how things worked and why certain decisions were made in certain ways. And then that gave me the structural know-how so that when I started, and, look, I've always been the person that said, look, I'm going to go take my driver's license test. And, by law of averages, it cannot be that hard, because look out your window at how many people are driving a car, right? Not everybody can drive a car, but it's got to be easy enough that all these people can drive a car. Now, I'm going to study like hell for the test because I don't want to not drive a car, right? But on some level, you know, look at all these independent publishers. You know, you got to be able to somebody figured it out, right? And if you throw me into a pack of 50 people or 100 people, I'm not saying I'm going to be number one, but I'll probably figure it out, right? And so I've always been that person. The University of Texas is where I went to school. It's 57,000 people. You go to freshman orientation, and they literally, you've always heard this story. I lived it. You go to freshman orientation in a giant, like almost football stadium like area, and they go, look at the person to your left, look at the person to your right. They're not going to be here at the end of the semester because they're not going to be able to hack it. They're not going to be able to handle it. They're going to fail and go home. And I'm the guy that goes, well, it's an ocean of 57,000 people. I'll get my way through it. There might be people getting shot to my left and to my right, but I'll figure out my way through it. And so I've always just had that personality.
Everything you said just now speaks to me so much, and I feel like I can truly relate to you. But one thing I want to say before we go on, Ross, before we got on, you asked me how many people you would think would be good for viewership. I just want to let you know right now, we got 16 people watching, and they've been responding to everything. And we got a ton of people throwing comments out there, telling us their favorite Boom titles. We got Trish and Mike. There are big fans, and they picked up KLAUS. They wanted me to track it down. Unfortunately, I couldn't. But Jen King at Space Cadets could take care of them. And you know, Jen is a firm believer in what Boom is doing and all this stuff. And I just wanted you to see this, Ross, just so you know, because this is about you. And I know we're covering up your face right now. I apologize.
Thank you. I don't mind at all. I love it. I love it. Jack, thank you so much. I'm going to peek over the top here. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. And I always love to pronounce Jen King's name differently. I add a middle name, which is the. And so I always call her Jen the King. I call her Queen King. That's good. That's good. Probably better. So one thing I want now that, and you know, this is truly what's amazing to me is, you know, my father is also an entrepreneur, and I was raised by an entrepreneur, and you know, my brother, my sister's ex-husband was also an entrepreneur, so it naturally led me to kind of like want to take that on, and it is quite a burden. Particularly during the difficult times, of which I'm sure we all go through it. But I really want to go back to what you were saying before about COVID now, because you know that has affected the industry in a way, in a recent memory, and that's a challenge that we've all had to sort of figure out. And it took me about 7 months to figure it out. We were talking backstage before, and you know, now I've found my sort of like my new outfit as a dealer, and learning to embrace that. Whereas with you, it wasn't like that at all. It was the complete opposite. And I would say that this year, Boom has really moved into a position that's really pivotal in the marketplace, not just from the direct market standpoint, but also with crowdfunding and other platforms. So you guys are definitely building. And on top of that, you have what you're doing right now, which is giving other creators who are looking for future opportunities a chance to learn directly from people who are doing it, including yourself. So I was wondering if you could kind of like speak more about how you kind of dealt with the initial shock of COVID and the lockdowns, and what helped you kind of like stay on the path and get to where you are now, which I think is amazing. Back to comeback, you guys have come back stronger than ever. Thank you. Well, look, you know, when something like COVID happens, you know, you got to decide, are you going to go down? Or are you going to live? And for us, the decision was clear. You know, we've got to decide that we're going to flourish. And once you make that decision, then you start to see the world for opportunities. And the first thing that we knew was if you own a comic shop, You have no idea after the shutdown if the fans are coming back. So Diamond is asking you 2 weeks before you reopen to order a slate of books, and you're in the dark. You have no idea. Are fans going to be there? And when the shutdown happened, there was 2 weeks worth of books in the pipe. There was the books that had just landed from the printer and were literally at the Diamond warehouse. And there was the books that had just come off the printer and were going to be loaded onto trucks to go to Diamond. And we had to re-FOC, final order cutoff is what FOC stands for. We had to re-offer these books to retailers. The situation had changed, and we needed to give them the opportunity to adjust their orders up or down. And the very same books that we had offered to them pre-shutdown, they ordered a second time 3% higher. And then the second week, it was 3% higher. And then the third week was a slate of new books that they hadn't ordered yet, and it went 8% higher. And our sales increased every week. And what we did was we went to retailers and we said, we're going to make everything returnable. Now, previously, we had made first issues returnable, which had, if you will pardon me, kind of revolutionized the business. Other publishers started to adapt returnability after we made it widespread. We're not the first company to offer returnability to the direct market. We were the first company to offer it on all of our first issues. And so after that, we basically made every single issue that we published returnable, and we did it to a greater time period. So we kicked the time period out from March out to, like, I want to say it was like through the summer. And that gave retailers the sense that they could order, and they had safety, and they had a safety net so that they could see where their audience was. And what people didn't see coming was that fans were hungry, and fans had been, in lockdown, and they were looking to support their local comic shop, because what comic shops are is look, my wife is a screenwriter, and she's a nerd, and she's seen all the movies, and she's written comics. And she just does not want to talk to me about X-Men history. She didn't care, right? And that's the conversation you can have in the comic shop. You can't have that conversation, most people, at work. Your coworkers don't care, right? And your wife, when you go home, doesn't care. But when you walk in that comic shop, you know for 100% that everybody in that store cares.
I love it. Oh, Ross, you're awesome, man. You're the man, dude.
Yeah.
Really, that is how you think about the fans, because it's really about the fans. That's what being a publisher is. It's not it's all about that end result. It's not about what people are thinking about you. It's what the fans are going to think. And can I tell you, one of the most touching moments for me during the lockdown was when Philip Sabeck released that video out to Diamond about the comeback, and he just had this he was like a Jedi, straight up, like just calming everybody down with like the Jedi metrics. It's all gonna be good, y'all. It's all gonna be good. And not only was it good, it went to being great because you guys knew what was up. So tell us about crowdfunding. I want to hear everything about this because I think it's fascinating. Okay. I'm a backer, by the way. I'm a backer, and I can't wait.
Okay, we're going to talk about crowdfunding, but I'm going to do a little tangent real quick. Okay,
please.
And I'm going to talk about James Tynan. James Tynan IV had this book. We did this original graphic novel. It was called Wind, and it was set for release in November of this year. And after lockdown, we see comic sales going up. Marvel had stopped shipping. DC had spread their shipping out. Like 4 weeks worth of books was spread out over 6 weeks. And we saw that fans were hungry. And I got this idea. I was like, let's take Wind and let's serialize the comic and turn the graphic novel into a serialized story and then collect it later. And I called up Tynan, and Tynan's crazy. Like I'm pretty crazy. And so when, James and me together is trouble, okay? Because we'll get up to all sorts of craziness like this. And Philip Sabeck went to me and he said, you can't do this. I said, well, why can't I? He said, well, genius, let me remind you that you need to email the information to Diamond with the JPEGs. Diamond has to collate all that, put it into the catalog. The catalog has to be printed physically. It needs to be shipped to the retailers. The retailers need a 4-week window to collect orders from fans. And then they need to guess their numbers, and then you need to FOC it. And you don't have time. You can't get the book out. Okay, there's not physically enough time in the time frame.
No one's going to pull special favors for you because you're Ross Ritchie of Boom. There's protocol, and you got just like everybody else.
Oh yeah, get in line, pal. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I said, Philip, I don't care. I want to go to FOC and I want to skip the previous process.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm down. Where's this going next?
Okay. And so what that meant was we had 5 days to announce and then collect orders.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Yes, you
Guys,
get it.
Those of you who don't know, you usually have about 30 days, is it?
Oh, you have 3 months. Because
3 months. 3 months. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. 3 months crammed into 5 days.
90 days to 5 days.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm assuming you didn't get much sleep that 5 days.
Actually, I slept like a baby because my philosophy was Tynan was in a really great position. He hadn't launched Department of Truth yet, but Something is Killing the Children was working. And Punchline was coming. And he had the industry's attention. And the key here was Marvel and DC weren't really shipping much. And like the biggest story was Punchline. And of course, we were growing on Something is Killing the Children. And so what I knew was if I did something really wackadoo, if I did something completely insane like this, and we got the word out and everybody heard, that we would get everybody's attention. And that worked. Now, I'm clearly a gambler. And so I've got ice in my veins. I don't have any problem rolling the dice like this. But that was the move that I made. The sales came in. They were the first print on Wind sold better than the first print on Once and Future or Something is Killing the Children. And so it became Boom's biggest original hit. Now, both those series and subsequent printings went crazy and I think they went through, each issue went through 8 printings. So they ultimately outstripped it. But let's move on to the crowdfunding. So we're talking about Keanu Reeves doing Berserker. And here's the thing is I knew, we basically developed this series as a 12-issue series. We brought in Matt Kent to write it with Keanu. We've been working on the story for a long time. We totally knew that we wanted to launch this after We Were Only Find Them When They're Dead. And we were going to serialize a conventional comic with a variant strategy and basically we were excited about the idea of this being a hit. But when I went to sleep at night, I thought about, you have Keanu Reeves. How can you take this and get people who've never read comics before to read comics? Now, that's an intimidating idea, right? Which is, how do you do that? There's no framework. People
out of doing it with Yisun Shin, because the way I do it is at conventions. Let's be honest here, Ross. We both have convention experience. How many people who actually attend comic conventions actually read comic books? They come there for the celebrities, right? We gotta go after them in order to, and that's what Kevin and I do best. We go after them, but it's a lot harder when you're doing it with collectibles. When you're doing it with your own project, you can pitch thousands of people different faces the same way. So, but here's where I think it gets tricky. Despite what I just said, I think when you're looking at a digital platform like Kickstarter, I think it's extremely hard because you can't bank on that. In fact, I don't think you can bank on anything, even with James, what happened with James Tynan and the Wind. The fact that you were able to make that all work was a matter of having the right feel about it, knowing that if I do this, it's the right thing. I feel aligned doing this, that even if I fall flat on the sword and bleed out everywhere, at least I know I gave it a shot. At least I did it.
Yes, absolutely.
On that front, how were you? How speaking on that? How were you able to shift people over to the Keanu fans out there over to Kickstarter?
Well, the thing about it is, if you want the Keanu fans to show up, put Keanu on Kickstarter and wait. And, we got 13,000 of them. And, you know, we got picked up by USA Today, you know, right? I mean,
That's awesome.
and the thing about it is, you know, the thing that I was worried about was how do you, if you explain to people how comics work that are civilians, it's too hard, right?
It totally is. It's so hard. Oh my God.
It's like, hey, this is going to be a 12-chapter story, so I'm going to need you to show up every 30 days, 12 times, right? No, thank you, right? Or, hey, you're used to a TV binging experience, or you're going to watch John Wick and it's going to be a complete story, right? John Wick 1 is a complete story. John Wick 2 is a complete story. I'm going to give you this $15 graphic novel, and it's going to be part 1 of 3.
That's awesome.
Why am I signing up for that? Right? That didn't make any sense.
I want to speak to your choice of creators for this, because you got Ron Garney on there.
Well, let me just finish that idea.
Oh, sorry. I'm so excited.
No. It's cool, but the thing is what I knew was you need a simple interface, okay, that everybody knows Kickstarter, and you can click on that interface and you can buy all 3 graphic novels at once, and then they get shipped to you as they get manufactured. And you can set and forget. And you could be like, oh, I signed up for the Keanu Reeves thing. And what's great about the Kickstarter experience is people don't expect it tomorrow, right? They're like, you need to go make the thing. And when you make the thing, you'll send me the thing and you'll send me updates, right? And that's how Kickstarter works. And so it was a perfect venue for it, where we're using it as a digital distribution platform. It was more analogous to a web store for us, where we weren't crowdfunding in a conventional sense because we had funded the project on our own. We were ready to offer it as retail sales. And these fans showed up, and they were, let's say you love John Wick and you read TMZ and People Magazine, and you love Keanu Reeves. Well, I can click on this thing. I'll get all 3 volumes. It'll be a complete story, and it'll get shipped to my door. And I don't ever have to. Now, the flip side is, we get an email list of people that have never read comics before, and we can send them email blasts and tell them when the comic is in the comic shops.
And you can turn them on to your other titles too.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is building the industry, which is why
Yes.
I think another thing that's important to say. And then I do want to talk about your creative decisions, because you do make creative decisions, whether you acknowledge it on the air or not. But I don't think it was an accident who you hired to work on the writing, or who you brought together to work on the writing and art for this particular book, because you got Matt Kint working on the story, very psychological writer, very in depth, and totally speaks to that Keanu crowd. For those of you like Matrix and all that stuff, this is different. This is not John Wick. This is Berserk. And then for the art choice, what I found really interesting is you got Ron Garney on there, who's an avid martial artist. I think he does the same stuff that Keanu Reeves does. I know Keanu's more like Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but that's straight up Ron Garney right there. He rolls all day. So it's really
you should be in a conversation between the two of them, because they will go when they talk about that. They're also both into motorcycles.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So you got Keanu, and Keanu's actually writing this too. So he's involved. He's involved with the actual process. It's not like, hey guys, it's Keanu's face. Bye. We'll see you when the comic comes out. Keanu's actually a part of this too. And guys, you know what Keanu's thinking? He's thinking about how we're going to build this thing and turn it into something bigger than John Wick, or something on the same level that can live up to it. It doesn't matter. Just get it out there. You guys are all aligned with one vision. And I think that that's your responsibility. I think you're the one who made that happen. And I think that's where the creativity in being a publisher comes in. So how did that come together for you?
Well, I think that, you got to be really careful about who you put in front of Keanu as a possible collaborator. And Matt is somebody that we had great success with. We had Grass Kings and Black Badge and Folklords. And so we had an existing body of work with Matt. We love him and love his work, very high opinion of him. And part of it is, you know, if you put somebody in front of a movie star, are they going to be professional enough to hold it together? Which, you know, I'm not sure sometimes I am professional enough to hold it together. So, you know, that's a part of the consideration of, you know, KEANU doesn't want to sit around and spend 30 minutes talking about, you know, how cool was Point Break, right? You know, he wants to get to work on the project. And so, you know, we knew that Matt could deliver on all those things. And, you know, Ron obviously has a tremendous profile. You know, one of the fun things about Ron was he didn't believe at first that KEANU had picked him. And so, you know, when you work with a new creator, somebody external to the business, you know, you got to create a shared vocabulary of what kind of style you're looking to draw the series in. And so you send them batches of artists and you try to, you know, how, you know, an example is lighting. So for some people that work in the movie business, you know, is it going to be bright and open or is it going to be dark and shadowy, right? How are we going to shoot this movie, right? So we go through this winnowing process of creating a vocabulary shared between Boom and KEANU of what we're looking at. And, you know, KEANU gravitates to Ron. And, you know, we had to kind of go through an arc with Ron where we were like, hey, Ron, KEANU wants to work with you. And he was like, are you sure that you showed him my work? And we're like, yes, Ron, he wants to work with you. He picked you, you know? And
I've met Matt before, actually, at that same convention I was telling you about before, because he's native to Kansas City, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, this was, I think, like 2 months, because you guys had announced this in 2019, I believe, right? That about the Keanu Reeves book. When did you guys first meet?
No, I think we announced it this year.
Okay, you announced it this year. Okay, but it was interesting just to see him back then, and then when the announcement was made, I was like, whoa! I was just like across from that guy at a convention table, and now he's co-writing a book with Keanu Reeves. So that's.
Well, he definitely was working on that at that time. I'll give you a fun story about Ron Garney. So Ron will probably kill me on this, but that's okay. It's just how much we love him and what an incredible job he's doing, because he's just crushing it. He's doing an incredible job. The first response, you know, KEANU, when he first got the pages that Ron had drawn, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to explain how involved KEANU is. Okay, for you to understand, not only is he co-writing it, he's looking at every page, he's looking at every panel, and he has an opinion. And Ron turned his pages in, and KEANU said, you know, I've got a note. And Ron's like, what is it? And KEANU's like, it's not violent enough. He's like, if you could go back in here and add more blood and viscera, this needs to be completely and utterly savage. You're holding back, bro. Like, I want to let loose, and I want, you know, paint the walls with blood. So I know the fans are going to get a big kick out of, you know, the way that I would contrast it with John Wick is, you know, Wick is very beautiful. Everyone wears Armani. They speak very politely. The action is highly choreographed and kind of balletic. It's, you know, the Continental is this beautiful hotel. The colors are incredible. I mean, I love this series. It's an amazing series. But, you know, Berserker is down and dirty, man. It is gritty, and I think it's completely the opposite.
Wait, it's going to be awesome. This is so cool. So you guys can see now that it's – and it's hard, I think, because, again, I don't think you're getting enough credit for this. I don't think you'll ever get enough credit for this, but I don't think that's why you did it. I think – you know, can you tell us why you're doing it? Like, why? What's motivating you? What's the future for Boom? Why are you going to keep doing this? Because, again, a lot of people can say, all right, well, I got the star power here, and it's going to work because I have the star power. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you can have star power and things can fall flat too. There are no guarantees. So I do believe that there is more to it than just simply putting the right people together in the same room. It's showing commitment. It's showing that you have experience, and it's showing that you have knowledge about, you know, what's going to happen and how you're going to take this property and turn it into a big thing, which is it's an incredible feat. That's like Atlas carrying the world on his shoulders. So
you're very kind. I'm not sure it's quite that, but I appreciate it.
Well, that's it is pretty much that's the case, because I mean, again, I'm sure even getting to the point where you're in the same room as Keanu Reeves is an incredible feat in and of itself, because you have to know the right people. You have to build a lot of connections, and people are like saying, well, you can go to a bar and just start drinking with people. Well, no, because to me, networking is not about making an ass of yourself. It's about learning to develop relationships that are meaningful. That's, to me, that's what my father always told me. What's business? Business is owning your own thing and being your own boss. No, it's not. Business is building relationships, building and maintaining relationships. That's what it is. That's what being a businessman is. So going back to that and going to where we see, where we see Boom now, where you've managed to find success, both in the direct market after, this lockdown, because of gambles you were willing to take on creators like James Tynan IV, knowing that they were about to hit a big stride. You knew it, you saw it, and you went after it. The same thing happened here with, making this Berserk book, which is definitely, you guys are hearing it now. Keanu Reeves is actually working on this book. He's not just putting his name on it. That says something right then and there, and now you're looking to the future. And I know that you guys don't have small plans, because why would you have small plans? So can you give us just maybe a little bit of a hint of what we can expect from Boom going into next year in terms of some of the avenues that you guys are going to be looking into in order to get more comics in people's hands, as we're seeing conventions like, still off pretty much. I think we can pretty much safely say that for 2021, we're not going to be at conventions anymore. And until maybe the end of the year, maybe they'll start coming back slowly. But until then, you have networks like CBSN, which, we're a part of, guys, as you know, and there are the actual stores out there that we're also partnered with. We're trying to help them move some of their dead inventory or their overstock, however you want to put it. And we're working with them so that we can keep this industry afloat. But the only way I think we can really be successful with that is with publishers like you out there, really pushing boundaries, bringing really talented people together to make great books. So can you give us just a little bit of something for the future?
Thank you so much, first of all, for all those kind words. And I'm not giving you bupkis.
I love it. That's great. Thank you.
Yep. But I look, here's the serious answer is the way that you framed your question is 100% correct, which is we look for opportunities to put books in the hands of people that don't read comics. And that is something that is always of interest to us. And we have a huge announcement that's going to be coming, which you're going to look at on the face of it, and you're going to say, I don't know. But what I would tell you it's similar to the Power Rangers. So when we decided to publish the Power Rangers, it had been published by Marvel and failed. It had been published by Hamilton, another publisher, and had done good for Hamilton, but maybe had not really gone the distance. And it had been passed around to like 4 or 5 different comic book publishers. And, if Marvel can't make something work, that's intimidating. And what we had decided was that we understood generationally where the audience was, which was the audience for Power Rangers was millennials. And that millennials were coming of age, and that when they were kids, this was on the air. And the approach to the material, editorially, creatively, was we were going to do the show you thought that you watched. And what I mean by that is when you go and watch the Power Rangers as an adult, you see that some of it is maybe not very well dubbed. And some of the monster costumes are not quite as breathtaking as they were when you were 6. And some of the character drama is a little, perfunctory, now that you've aged. But when you were 6, it was mind-blowing, right? And what we wanted to do was to do a comic book that was as mind-blowing as the Power Rangers was to you when you were 6. And so we were going to take it dead serious, and we were going to really deliver on the heroism and the drama. And this thing that I'm talking about that we're going to announce is similar to that, where it's been published by other publishers, and it has not necessarily taken. And so I'm telling you, we're going to have a line of naysayers, and they're going to line up, and they're going to go, why did you decide to publish this thing? You know, such and such published it, and such published it, and it didn't. And now I'm thinking of a third company, such and such published it, and each time it didn't really work. And the answer is going to be, we know what the creative way in is. Number 2, that we believe generationally this is the moment. And number 3 is, this is a great gateway to get a bunch of people that never read comics to read comics. And we think we know how to do it. And
Ross, if everybody was here right now, if everybody watching was in a room right now, you get a standing applause for what you just said, because to me, you got me excited. You already got me on board for this as a dealer, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with this. And I appreciate just that little something. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. And please don't tell us anymore, because I think it's going to be something so huge. But you guys are hearing it here first. Boom is doing big things. And Ross, I want to say something too. We have had. By the
way, the name of the company is not Whimper. I just want to say.
Yeah, exactly. It's not Whimper. It's Boom Studios. And honestly, I feel like we're just scratching the tip of the surface here. And I appreciate everything that you have shared with us today, because, like, honestly, I feel like I could talk to you for another 3 hours and get just so much more in-depth look at just your philosophy of this business, and just simply understanding that publishing comics is an extremely difficult thing, but you can't do it unless you believe in what you're doing. And I can see from our conversation this afternoon that you truly understand what you're doing, and you love that you're doing it. Everybody refers to you as the ambassador of comics, and I think that can be said because you didn't follow the traditional routes. Your career in comics has not been like, I'm trying to hunt down, I want to work at Marvel and DC. You've gained experience from outside sources that allowed you to build this really amazing company that's putting out some of the best comics that we're seeing in today. And I can't wait to see what the future has in store for you, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on your show.
Absolutely. If it would be okay with you, I'd like to talk to you backstage as we close out here. And if there's any closing comments you would like to make, please feel free to do so, because I don't want you to feel like you're getting cut off. We just have to end everything at the hour mark.
No, I appreciate it. It's just please subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit like and comment, and hit the bell so that when I upload, I'm going to upload another episode of Kieran Gillen today. And check me out on Instagram and leave some comments and tell me what you think so that I can respond. So give me some feedback and get engaged. I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, Ross, thank you so much. Hang out backstage. I'll be right with you, my friend. Thank you. Again. You were. This was for coming back and bringing Live with Onrie back. This is the first episode I've had a chance to do since October, because I've been just shifting around. Coming back with you as my guest, you are the inspiration for me to launch this again. So we started off with the Boom. Thank you so very much personally.
Thank you.
Thank you. For making time for me, because I know how busy you are. There's lots of people out there that are much worthier of your attention. So I appreciate you hanging out with me today. And
my pleasure.
It's great interview. All right, thank you, sir. I'll be right back. Yeah. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Hang on. There we go. There you have it, folks. We had a great interview with Ross. I will be on tomorrow, and Kevin will be on tomorrow on Kicking It with Onrie and Kevin, the live shopping show. We got all kinds of holiday stuff going on. So you guys know my son Max, he's doing the holiday card this year. So with every order from from every order you make with me, you guys get a holiday card. And I'm gonna show you guys real quick the actual art that Max did. And be sure to check us out. We'll be on CBSN tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Eastern. Then later in the evening, we'll be on at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. I got all kinds of stuff. I'm going to have boom stuff for sale tomorrow. Boom goes the dynamite. Come hang out with us, and I can't wait to see you. Hang on. I'm going to put the holiday card commercial on. We're good to go. All right. Hang on.
This year, my dad asked me to design the holiday card for 100 Killer Collectibles. He asked me to draw lots of superheroes, and so here's what we came up with. So this is the holiday card that I made for you, and I'm going to tell you what each letter represents. So this one is Hulk, and I made a bunch of cracks on it. And this one is Avengers. This one is Punisher. This one is the Phoenix, and this one is Yishun Chin. And this one is Hawkeye. This one is Green Lantern. This one is Losers. This one is Inhumans. This one is Daredevil. And this one is Aquaman. And this one is Yishun Chin. And this one is Superman. So also, I made a bunch of drawings on it, like Spider-Man. I made Spider-Man, Flash, Iron Man, and Batman, and some holiday stuff.